Welcome back, Rage Nation. Got myself Pete here.
That's not really exciting.
You got Senior Dixon.
I don't think that's appropriate.
And we got Monsieur Leopard.
Explorers deserved it. No.
Absolutely.
I was disgusted. I cannot believe they've done this.
It's wacky, it's not good, it's just nonsense.
I disagree on that. That's not possible.
We're getting the band back together. We're on a mission. Yeah.
Now we've got a whole new list of things to complain about.
Welcome back, Rage Nation. We are at it again. Got myself Pete here. And we are finally getting back into it. We are doing the Gaining Ground series that we did with GG4. It's where we go through each of the factions and we basically say which masters we like and don't like into each strategy that is in the Gaining Grounds. So first on the block is we're going to do Arcanists. And of course, I don't know if you can talk competitive Arcanists without bringing Brodie on. Brodie just knows how to beat the brains out of people with the old Arcanists. What's going on, Brodie?
Oh, I try.
And then first time on the show, we got Jeff with us. Jeff, I didn't even know you were an Arcanist player over there at Defective Dice.
Yeah, they're the good guys, so they're who I play.
Are they the good guys?
Yes, definitively.
Most of them are.
Well, cool. I know Brodie plays a crap ton of Arcanists, but Jeff, how long have you been playing Arcanist?
So I played mostly Thunders and a little bit of Rezzers in 2nd edition, and then when 3rd came out, I started playing Arcanists, and I've pretty much played them, not entirely exclusively. I've jumped into other factions just for one-off here and there just to mess around, but pretty much exclusively Arcanists since 3rd edition.
My exposure to Arcanists was like, hey, look how cool Sandeep 2 is. And then Brodie was like, hey, look at the nonsense you can do with Colette. And I was like, cool, I'm in.
Yeah, I think it's a cool faction. They have a lot of different unique play styles across the different masters. And, they may not all be good, but they're all fun. So
I don't know. They're pretty good.
Honestly, most of them are pretty good.
Yeah, because even when I was looking at kind of what are some of the ones I'm going to pick? Which ones are the ones that I think aren't good into the strategy? I actually had trouble figuring out ones that I just would never pick. So I'm interested when we get to that part of each strat. But before we get into that, make sure you guys are checking us out. You can do that on our Discord channel. We also got the YouTube channel that you can check out. Always trying to put at least one video out a month. Discord channel is always popping off. We always got weird conversations going on in there. And then if you want to support us directly, you can do that at patreon.com/RageQuitWire. You can support us for as little as, I think it's $3 now. And then we also have our affiliation link with Weird. You can just find that in the show notes. And if you buy stuff through Weird, get a little kickback on the podcast, which is always nice. So I think a lot of people will agree that Arcanists are pretty strong. So I'm definitely going to be curious to see which masters we all decide to pick, because it can be really interesting in this Gaining Grounds for for Arcanists on which ones you would pick. So we'll go ahead and get started, and we're going to start with the one that's most similar to Gaining Grounds 3. So we're going to start with Raid the Vaults. Now, obviously, this can change depending on deployment. But for those of you that are kind of, newer to Malifaux, Raid the Vaults is the one where you pretty much got to have models standing within 2 inches of a strategy marker, either on the center line or in your opponent's half of the board. And then if you have more models standing on that point, you score the VP, and you have to score one more than the previous turn that you did. So it's pretty much just stand and control point. That's what that one is. So Jeff, you're new to the show, so I'm going to start with you, man. So what is your favorite master, or you think the best master for you for Raid the Vaults?
So Raid, I like Marcus for Raid the Vaults.
Okay.
I think that his crew is very good at being mobile and also being a little bit unpredictable. Being able to throw wings on any model that you want means that you can kind of redirect and kind of move off to another position if you need to. There's also a lot of both friendly movement and offensive movement, so you can you can kind of reposition if you need to, and you can also throw enemy models off of positions if you need to. So I think he's good at scoring it, but I think he's also really good at defending it.
So are you playing the title? Or are you playing the original?
I'm pretty much playing exclusively Marcus 2 at this point. I know there are still people
He just
who
has a
play
push on
Marcus
his
1.
attack. It's pretty good.
I mean, he's got a push on his attack. He's also got I forget what it's called, but he has like an 8-inch push somebody away. And if they're a minion, they get slow. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, when I first looked at the title, I thought he was strictly an upgrade over Marcus 1. I know there are people who still play Marcus 1 in certain circumstances.
Oh, I do.
Do you? I'm really curious why. I can't come up with a reason. I feel like Marcus 2 gets so much more value out of the upgrade.
So the reason why I do it is because, one, I like card draw. So anytime there's card draw, I kind of like it. And then the second one is I just like more directly putting my upgrades out and being like, I need this upgrade here now. And I also like the out of activation charges. It's kind of cool. So that's mainly the reason. I think the second one's probably better just objectively, but I like the first version quite a bit.
Okay, that's fair.
Marcus 1 has a bit more of a toolboxy sort of, you can put out your upgrades where you need them, whereas I feel Marcus 2 is very much you work out what you need before the game, get everything there, and then go nuts.
Yeah, if you want a decent way to unpack,
on the Marcus 2 train.
Yeah, if you want a decent way to unpack Marcus 1, I actually played him on Rich's channel on Beard Minis, and it was just a decent little unpack. You saw how to get stuff out, and you just push models out, and it just worked out really good. But I agree. I think on Raid, I just think Marcus 2 is probably better just because of the pushes. And also he just has some nasty combos, honestly.
Yeah, like Kojo's got triggers that can move you and move other models. The Order Initiates, which you really need to put the upgrades out if you're playing Marcus 2, they have friendly movement abilities. Miranda's got friendly movement abilities. Like you kind of have a little bit of everything. I found that when I've played against really new people, because I'm not like a super competitive player, but when I've played against new people, they kind of hate playing against Marcus because he's super unpredictable. Like you never know what's about to happen. You might have a model grab wings and then fly across the board, and you don't see that coming. So I think that's really advantageous on Raid.
Yeah, and the other reason why I do like Marcus 1 is because not only do you get Cedra, which is just amazing, but then you can also get, the Blessed of December. So now you have these two ridiculous scheme runners to just go do whatever you need them to do.
That's true. Hiring beasts, I guess, is the thing, right?
It's the only beast that you hire in Arcanists. Obviously, Neverborn, you have way more choices.
Right.
Okay. So what about you, Brodie? What is your favorite master to bring in Raid the Vaults?
Well, not just saying Damien every time. I'm going to go with my favorite, good old Mei Feng too. She's very good at grinding. She can stand in the middle of the two strats that are on the midline, and just anything who enters dies.
So before you share more about Mei Feng and Foundry, I think we can all agree on that. Okay, Brodie could play Damien in every pool pretty much. I don't play Damien because he's Cancer and I just don't like him. Jeff, are you a fan of Damien, or you just leave him alone?
So I like Damien in concept. I didn't want to play him when he's like super broken, but I want to play him now. I just have not gotten around to actually painting that crew yet.
So let's just all agree that Damien's pretty good,
super broken.
And you could play
He's
him.
still super broken.
Yeah. But
I was unfortunately victimized by Damien when he was
right.
especially broken. So I do have a little bit of a grudge, but I'm trying to forgive him.
Yeah. So go ahead and talk through some of the things that Mei Feng does good into Raid the Vaults.
All of her models are pretty damn tanky. You've got a lot of armor. She gives out shielding at the start of every turn. You have sparks to give out shielding as well. And there's a bunch of incidental healing for constructs, which is really helpful. But then Heated Iron is the main one. You have just consistent damage to remove people from the vault markers. If you can just, get a gammon, put the explosives on it with sparks, send it in, pulse out twice. It's going to be hard to kill because of that. It's got another shielding, so it can pulse out even more if an opponent punches it or if you shoot it yourself. And then it drops a scrap, and that then pings them again. So you've just kind of done 3 to 4 damage in an activation without flipping cards, which is really, really good, or without the flips mattering. And then you can kind of just grind things down with that. Mei Feng also has shove aside, so you can push people out of the way. There's a bit of knock aside around as well on the rock hopper and on sparks to just get things out of the way. And then you've got ride the rails to push deep when you need to. When you see a Wraith Vault on the opponent's side that hasn't been protected well, you can just go with Mei Feng, drop a scrap, and then have someone dart out of your bubble and sit there and score you points. The keyword also supports the best model in Arcanists, I think, which is Gearlings. Gearlings solve every problem ever. Just having the ability to, if you need to, move 20 inches and then interact, or move 25 inches if you need to, is ridiculous, and she supports it pretty well with the Forgeling and just her ability to give out conditions. So that's kind of why I like her. But going in on the Damien of it, Damien kills things, so Damien is good at it. I think while people were pretty excited about the current GG at the start of it not being about killing, it's still about killing. It's about action efficiency and killing, and killing removes action efficiency and stops your opponent from scoring. If you kill their significant models, then they can't score, and that means your opponent gets less points than you.
Yeah, you can always do removal of AP, and that's going to affect obviously how much interacting you can do in the game. Plus, Raid the Vaults is still stand on a spot, so if you can't move them off the spot, just go ahead and kill them. And that's just kind of the game, right?
And that is the Damien
move. I will say probably my pick. I like Sandeep a lot. He's kind of, once you know how to pilot him, he's very flexible. I don't know if I'm going to pick him more in this, but he's pretty good at raid, because anytime you have to stand in spots, and I'm talking specifically about Font of Magic, I don't play the first version, but anytime you have people standing around, it's like, oh, you have to be within 2. That's just disastrous, just for, shockwaves. Just, hey, you're going to be on fire a lot, and you're going to fail a bunch of these, and it's going to feel good. Plus, the keyword just has a lot of movement, kind of like what you guys were saying with wanting things to push people out of areas. Sandeep does the same thing. You can toss models multiple times. It's a stat 4 toss. You have Up We Go with the Wind Golem. You can just kill models. That's always an option too. And not only that, but your crew's very mobile with all the concentrating you're going to be doing and all that other stuff. So, and it's just very efficient. It doesn't draw hardly any cards unless you get lucky with like Kendara or Rajput. But it's just so efficient where it's like you have so many actions that you just don't care if they all go off. And that's generally kind of how you work with Sandeep. And plus, you can also just block people out of areas with Ice Pillars. The Wind Gammon are great. But if you don't want to bring Wind Gammon, you can always just bring the Gearlings as well. And Gearlings work great in Sandeep because you're also putting out a lot of conditions. So it works out really well.
Yeah, I'd say Sandeep is a very similar case to Damien, weirdly. Slightly less power, but still very, very powerful, where he's very flexible. You can hire what you need to, and he can approach anything.
Yeah.
Sandeep does it with flexibility. Damien does it with raw power. But yeah, I think they kind of work in a very similar way of they can be built and be played to fix any problem.
Yeah.
And they kind of end up being the, oh no, I don't have something. We'll drop one of them. Whereas when talking about specific strategies, we're choosing the best for it, which those might be the best in certain situations or in certain matchups. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Sandeep is a very flexible master. He's a little weaker because I think probably Damien's a little tankier as far as like stuff not dying as easy. Whereas if you put Sandeep's stuff in the wrong position, it will go down like a house of cards. And we got Loki, Bryn.
Yeah, Damien has the problem of he is very, very efficient, and he has a lot of effects that just happen that are far too powerful for what you are paying. Like Memories of the Yellow Crypt, just pushing a model 12 inches in a turn is a little bit much.
Yeah.
And you don't lose anything from that.
Jeff, I'm going to start with you on this. So what is a master you don't like? And I wouldn't even say that's not good into this, because honestly, as I went down the list, I think most Arcanist masters could have a fair shake at Raid the Vaults. But what's one that you don't like either playing or you just don't think you're as good with in that strategy?
I think I would have to say, I mean, there's masters that I'm less familiar with in Arcanists than others, but I think of the ones that I play a lot of, I would have to say Ironsides, because
Yeah.
her crew really wants to bunch up, so it's very hard to score that third and fourth point on that strategy with her. She's pretty good at defending it because she'll murder things and pull you across the board and make you fight her, which you won't want to do in this strategy, but you'll have a really hard time getting that third and fourth point in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think she's probably good at like staying on the center line and kind of controlling that area, but especially if it's like, corner or flank even.
Yeah.
I think sometimes she has trouble getting into that back part of the board. I don't know, Brodie, do you agree, or do you pick somebody else you wouldn't pick into it?
I'd agree, but I think Tony's still reasonable into it because of like how quickly you need to get to the other side, and due to how effectively Tony can hold the middle. Like she can hold the middle for 2 turns, and that's not particularly hard. And then like you've got 2.5 turns to get to one of the back markers. Also, at that point in the game, the flow of the game will have decided things. But I would generally agree. My other one is maybe Karis, but that's just because a lot of her keyword folds quite quickly.
Yeah.
And thus holding positions is difficult.
I wasn't thinking Karis because of her, because I think she's quite a strong master.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's her keyword that kind of will just all of a sudden die.
Yeah, like you could do Karis All-Star list of just Karis 1 with Elijah Borgman and a Firebranded, and then just grab good stuff from Arcanists and it'll be fine. But her and keyword, just there's a lot of models that just fold too quickly.
So I actually agreed with both of you guys. I probably lean more towards Tony, just because I think when you play Tony Ironsides, you kind of just default to, I'm going to play a grindy type of style, and I'm just going to try to win the center and bring you into it. But I will say the reason why I think this strategy and probably other ones that most Arcanist masters can just do it pretty decent is because you can just bring 2 Gearlings just to go get in that back corner. So even though we're talking about Tony struggling, you could just bring, 2 of the Gearlings and just send them off to go try and get those back points.
I mean, you've got the 17 stone package of 2 Gearlings and Harris J5, and that is just good profit. Like, it's just so efficient at what it does. So when you do need to send one, you can just go, I will grab that back one that's undefended by moving a model 20 inches, and that's good.
Yeah, I feel like Harrison got punished in that nerf, and then J5 and the Gearlings just got super good.
I think Gearlings got a sideways change because they no longer do passes, but they're quick and really good schemers. Whereas I think J5 got even better because weirdly people weren't playing him. I was playing him a lot pre-nerf, and he's just got better, which is a bit silly. And now everyone realized.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and hop into the next one. So we're going to get into plant explosives. This is an oldie but a goodie. So a lot of Arcanist players probably already had some of their favorite keywords to kind of go into it. So Jeff, I'm going to start with you. Who do you like when it comes to plant explosives for Arcanists?
So I'm going to undo the Tony slander that I just committed, and I think I'm going to go with Ironsides for this.
And before you get into Ironsides, once again, for newer players, plant explosives, you basically get explosive tokens on a model, and you have to interact to drop an explosive token on your opponent's half. You can put it on the center line, but then both players score that point. So ideally, you want them on the opponent's half. So you're basically getting out there, dropping an explosive marker, and if you have one down at the end of the turn, you score the point. So why Tony? That's kind of interesting.
So Tony, I go Tony because specifically of the fact that you can fight over the bomb, so you can take them from people.
So you're just putting them down, and you're like, all right, come and try to get it.
Yeah, pretty much. You pick an area of the board that you want to drop them all down. Obviously, it'll depend on the scheme pool and
Sure.
things like that. But I've had a pretty good amount of success by picking an area of the board, having the chaff in the list run around and drop the bombs, and then just fighting your opponent to stop them from dropping their bombs, and then occasionally taking one and dropping it for yourself. So I think she's good at defending it because she can deny an area of the board or punish you for being in an area of the board. She can also pull people from 12 inches away very consistently and punish you at the same time. And then,
or you can bring somebody in that has a bomb and say, I'm going to kill you and take your bomb.
right, yeah. So you pull them across. They might run off on the other flank to try to drop a bomb, but if they don't do it quick enough, you cat spring it. They run over, you kill them, take their bomb, and then you drop it on their side.
Okay, I think that basically says to us once again that when you declare Tony, it's like, I'm going to grind out this win. You better be ready for a brawl. Okay. What about you, Brodie? Who do you like bringing into Plant?
It's got to be Colette. Colette too. Her way of playing is so different, where then people will mainly expect you. What you do is you go with Colette 2 and you try and get out as many explosives on turn 1, turn 2, and you front load all of your AP and all of your interacts there, and then you use the fact that your opponent has to come and stop you, essentially, and it can weirdly blunt a lot of aggression out of lists because they can't just kill you, or they won't just kill you. Weirdly, they probably should just kill you. But they can't. They start to find it very, very difficult. And then you can use the likes of the Corofy Duet to protect and kill. The new Shadow Lark is amazing. It's a ridiculous model, and she can go in and just clean up things where you need it and be a bit more of a assassin-y. And then you've got a whole bunch of Don't Mind Me models that can,
that's kind of,
again, put even more pressure on your opponent's
that's kind of the thing,
plants.
right? Because if you're engaged, you can't interact. So what people do is they'll sit a model either next to or on top of the marker, and you can't interact with it because they're engaging you. Well, with Don't Mind Me, you can, unless it's like under a fat base.
Yeah, Carlos just wanders up, grabs it, and then next turn drops it for himself and goes, ha, 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 sucks to be you.
It does.
And you can take Gearlings, and you can take Harris, and you can just have such a weight of AP while still killing, which is quite helpful. I think people underestimate the effectiveness of the killing in Colette, and it mostly comes from they've throttled their own killing and their own defenses to affect the strategy, because that's how you win the game, and then you can kind of surprise them with stat 7 and stat 6 2 4 5s with great triggers. I was going to say I didn't want to pick Colette. However, I look at all the other Arcanist Masters and I'm like, yep, they can do it. Yep, they can do it. But Colette just is amazing. She just does it better.
She almost has a permit that just says she can do what she wants in that strategy. Just, you want to know what? My bird's going to go drop scheme markers so I can score my schemes. If you kill them, I get to draw cards. I'm going to get all these explosive markers down, and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. And then since all my stuff's down, I'm going to go start ripping yours up and delaying you and killing you with my double activating Corofy Duet. And if I want to bring Gearlings, they're going to be causing chaos, and J5's in there smoking things down. So yeah, it's really, really good. And it's a heck of a drug, I tell you. I mean, I don't see any reason to declare anybody else but Colette into Plant. You can, and obviously, like, I've played Plant Explosives with Sandeep, and I've done very well with it. I can see any of these masters doing it, but I think Colette is just so efficient at it that she's in her own league as far as that goes. And I don't know if you agree.
Obligatory Damien.
Do you think she might be the best master in Malifaux at Plant?
I don't know. So the thing about her is she doesn't play Plant like anyone else. Yeah. I don't know if it's exactly better. It's just very different. Like Shenlong, and when you can bring like Wandering River Monks and Golem and stuff like that, they do it really well. Having the monkey on the board is really, really good for Plant Explosives. But they play the game as you would expect. They fight in the middle.
Fairly, some would say.
Things go off the yeah. Well, weirdly, I don't think Colette is doing something unfair. It's just very different. And a lot of less experienced players might not play into it correctly. Where it looks like you need to go protect your stuff and fight over the strategy, and it's like, no, you need to kill them first, and then you can go play your game, because that's kind of how you have to deal with it. And as I was saying, Damien can do it. Again, 12 inches of free moves from doing nothing is very powerful. You can also take Shadowlark, which is great. A fast Shadowlark is a very good model. Also, Corofy and Damien's also horrendous.
Yeah, so mine's definitely with Colette as well. Jeff, what about somebody who you don't like bringing into plant explosives in Arcanists?
I think this is kind of a tough one because, like you said, I kind of feel like you can get by with anyone. I feel like I want to say Rasputina because she's not great at running across the board, but with Cedra now, I feel like you could make it work.
Yeah, I think Cedra and Blessed makes it doable. I agree, probably.
Yeah, I think
And
it might
Gearlings.
be to
Like, Gearlings and
counterplay that,
Raspu.
though. Well, yeah, that's always the answer is Gearlings.
Yeah, it is.
But I think she might still be my best answer. I mean, I was gonna say Hoffman, but for a similar reason, he's kind of slow and plotting, but he's got stuff in his keyword that can go fast if they need to. Yeah, I think this is tough.
Yeah, I think if I was going to pick mine, I think I would probably actually throw Hoffman in there. I know you can make stuff fast and you can go and reach out and do that, but Hoffman doesn't want to be spread out is the problem because all of his synergy is based off of power tokens coming off of him or the pylon markers. So it's like, okay, you give out fast and turn 1 or turn 2 you go do a lot of stuff. But then it's like, okay, but you need to spread out, and I think that's where some of the issue pops up with him because like you did this explosive thing, but then you either need to come back or you need to extend Hoffman out, and Hoffman 1 is so slow. It's not good into it. I know you have some quick models, but I think it quickly falls apart.
Yeah, I haven't played Hoffman in a really long time because I don't like that slow plotting play style. I know Hoffman 2 is a little bit different, but
Brodie, you've been nodding your head. Does that mean you also believe it's Hoffman?
Yeah, I believe it's Hoffman. And part of what it is Arcanist Hoffman doesn't have many tanky models that are super quick. Like, he has quick models like Hunters and
Watchers.
The Watchers are quick models, but the problem is that your opponent knows you're bringing armor. That's just a given from the onset. You've declared Hoffman, you're bringing armor. So they're going to be bringing some anti-armor. And if you've put your explosives down on your Hunter and your Watcher or your 2 Watchers that you've brought to try and do it, they just kill them.
Just go at them.
They just go with whatever they've brought to deal with armor and blow it off the table. They bring Mad Dog Bracket, and Bracket just walks, charges, dead. Cool.
Yeah. And like I said, he can do it, but it's just it's probably the worst way to do it in the keyword or in the faction.
Yeah, you're trying to brute force it at a certain point.
Yeah, because at least Rasputina, she sits back, but at least the Blessed and Cedra can just go do it. And then you can kind of creep, Rasputina and the rest of the crew up to, eventually put it on the other half. So I do think that's more playable than the Hoffman version. But like I said, it's not unplayable because Arcanists are just pretty solid. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next one. I'm just going to go to Cloak and Dagger. This one's kind of interesting. So for Cloak and Dagger, just kind of refreshing everybody's memory, or for all the newbies, Cloak and Dagger is definitely probably the most action intensive, probably in the new gaining grounds. You have to interact with 4 of these markers, these strategy markers, and you gain an intel token. And at the end of the turn, you discard intel tokens off of a model. The first time you only need to discard 1. Next time you discard 2, 3, 4, etc. to score those points. Your opponent can interact with your model to steal them. So you can not only just steal them off of the strategy markers, you can take them off your opponent's models, and that can include summon models can do that. And when you interact with the strategy, it also places 4 inches. So it becomes this weird kind of, I don't know how you guys have been doing with Cloak and Dagger, but for me, it's almost like you try to wait till the end of the turn to collect your intel tokens. So that way your opponent doesn't steal them, or you can jump in and steal them with maybe a summoned model or something. So I feel like that's a good way to play it. I just don't know if you guys have been playing that way in Cloak.
Similar, I would say. I'll talk about what I would choose. Again, it's between Colette and Damien, and it's because of those 2 very distinct ways I think you can play it. I think Colette, again, front loads it. She brings a lot of models that can move as a bonus action. So you can get the 3 AP, which is pushing you up on action efficiency. Or you can play the Damien way, which is kill everything you can, score later. You've got a couple of quick models that can punch through and get your first to second points of it between Harris J5 and Shadowlark to get you your first points. And then the later points, it's very difficult, but it doesn't matter if everyone's dead. If your opponent can't score anything, then you're fine. And by that point, you know how many points you need to score, and you can just bank on that. I'm a very big proponent for you need to stop people from scoring strategies. That is one of the first things you should do.
I think that's the reason why Damien's probably really good into Cloak and Dagger is because if they interact with the strategy marker, you can bring it towards your crew. So now for them to interact with it again, they have to come into your crew, which Damien likes kind of fighting in an area and just destroying what you love.
Yeah, I mean, Damien 1 is more of a ranged threat, so he's actually more likely to, they've interacted a bit too early. You kill that model, and then you send one of your made fast with the puzzle box models out, or you just start spending some of your yellow crypt movements to move the likes of Shadowlark or a Dabbler or something further up so you can go grab it. And that's personally my preferred way of playing that strategy, is to just kind of kill and accept that it's very difficult to score 4 points and just bank on you're going to kill them quick enough that they're not going to get to score as many as you.
What about you, Jeff? Who you liking into Cloak and Dagger?
So I haven't actually run this myself yet because I haven't gotten back into Raspy, but Raspy 2, I think, has to take the cake on this one. I played against Raspy 2 at the Danger Planet GT a couple weeks ago, and she basically makes it impossible for your opponent to score more than 1 point on it because you can interact through ice pillars. So you just, anytime your opponent tries to get to pick up one of the tokens, you just throw an ice pillar at them and then interact and take it from them. And you basically make your opponent score the points for you. After turn 2, I just stopped trying to score the strategy because I was like, I'm just giving you these points. I'm going to stop doing it so that you actually have to go do some work. It's pretty brutal. I was not expecting it to be that easy for him to just throw another ice pillar. You know, if you have the right models that can make the ice pillars, you just, anytime your opponent picks one up, you just throw an ice pillar at him, interact, it's mine now.
Yeah, Silent One's kind of sitting back and just being able to do that is really solid. I definitely agree with that.
And it's almost impossible to get to them because you can just stack a bunch of ice pillars up to jam up the works, unless, you know, if your opponent has a super mobile models or flying or something like that. But in the right matchup, it's like it's very difficult to deal with that.
Yeah, if you're playing against Raspy and you don't bring an answer to the ice pillars, you might just lose the game on the spot in some of these pools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because they're really.
I would say, because I have literally played Thunders. I played Shenlong into, I'm 90% sure it was Cloak and Dagger Rasputina 2. It became, I need to go wide because it's a lot harder for her to spread out because the range of the interact is only 8 inches. So you spread out, so where you are scoring is more impactful. I brought Sadir to destroy ice pillars, and I also just focused on killing. Like, he sent Bash in, and Shenlong one-rounded Bash. So, like, you have to focus on it that way. But yeah, if you are in their bubble of, 8 inches plus 8 inches of it's quite a large bubble of where they can affect, then yeah, it is very, very difficult. And it does become, I don't score or I don't try to do it. I just do it at the end of the turn if I can. Try bring efficient models to fight against it. Like, again, the monkey, he can move as a bonus action, so he can score it by himself, first point and second point, which is good. And again, Gearlings can do the same. Carlos Vasquez can do the same. Harris can do the same. Where if you can just get them into the right position a turn earlier, they can interact, bonus action, move, interact. And if you do that at the end of the turn, they at least can't do anything about it, which is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and my pick is actually a little different. I actually, for this one, I'm picking Sandeep again. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One, I actually think this is probably where, if you like playing Sandeep 1, I think this is where you play him. Summoning Gammon to just jump in and steal tokens is always pretty good. And you can just explode gammon. You can do a lot of the, I'm going to level up to bring all of a sudden this golem in your face. So I think that's probably a spot where you could play that and it'd be pretty decent. I would still probably play the title though, just because once again, you're still bringing the gammon who can just go ahead and, jump in, steal tokens, and that's fine. But once again, you got all these tosses. You have ways to muck up the board. People are going to be around these strategy markers. So once again, the shockwaves are just kind of causing chaos and things. You can also do the ice pillar game. And I also played around with bringing Cedra in Sandeep. And yes, it's very good. So turns out Cedra is pretty amazing even in Sandeep, because you can put ice pillars down with Sandeep as well. He's just really solid. He's really mobile. So kind of the same thing you were talking about, Brodie, where you can just, interact, use another action to place yourself, usually with a bonus, a lot of leaps, a lot of tosses. Also, remember, Sandeep too can pitch a card to do an action. So once again, more action efficiency. So yeah, just really solid. You just got to get your reps in because there's 1,000 ways to do it. So
I think weirdly, Cloak and Dagger is one of those strategies where the strategy doesn't matter as much. Because of how difficult it is to score the full 4, you kind of can just bank on the fact that your opponent's not going to easily get to 4, maybe not even 3, and you can just go, I've got a list that can do 2, maybe 3 if I'm pushed, and just focus on preventing your opponent. And when you think of it like that, it opens up a whole bunch of extra keywords that you can just be like, yeah, I'll just kill everything. I'll fight you for it. I'll score all my schemes and try and prevent you from scoring as many strats and prevent you from scoring your endpoints of your schemes.
I think the reason why it's so difficult to score that 4th point is because, remember, when you score with a model, it has to discard all of the tokens. Yeah. So even if you front load like 4, if you discard 1, you can't just do 1. You have to discard all 4. So it really prevents you from loading it up.
And plus, every time you're interacting with one of them, your opponent's moving it. So they're gonna even if you control a flank, they're gonna move it across, drag it across the board, and by turn 4, it'll be in a place you don't want to be, or you can't be. So
yeah. Well, one way to think of it is you need 10 tokens to score full points. Each one of those is an interact, so that's 10 AP that you've just got thrown away to interact. Every time you do it is another 4-inch move, so either it's a walk or a bonus action walk, so that's 20 AP you need to, at the bare minimum. That is everything going perfect, and you somehow activate right next to them every single turn. On top of that, you've got needing to move to them. So it becomes 30 AP throughout the game that you need to come up with.
Unless your opponent feeds you some, but, they shouldn't.
Yeah, which is...
Like if you walk an opponent, one of their models with one up to you, you can take it from them. But
I think Cloak is definitely it's usually the strategy I think you see the lower scoring games in a tournament. Mm-hmm. So you definitely want to plan for that.
They're either very lower scoring games, or there's a blowout and someone has just tabled someone and then just walked around and scoring everything. I don't think there's many 6-5s and that sort of level. It's either someone 1-by-1 at a very low number, or someone just killed everything.
All right. Well, who is somebody then that you wouldn't play into Cloak and Dagger? So we'll start with you, Jeff. Who's a master where you're like, I probably wouldn't bring that?
I think I'm going to pick on Hoffman again. I think most of the other crews in Arcanists have abilities that allow them to do extra little walks, so you can sort of interact and then follow up in some ways, whether it's bonus action movement or friendly effects that move your models. And Hoffman doesn't have a ton of that. His models tend to be fairly slow. And I think you can play with a higher model count with more AP, but generally speaking, his crews I think are lower on the kind of AP scale. So I think he probably struggles a little more than the rest of them.
Yeah, I think it depends on how you play him. I think I would probably play Hoffman 1 if I was going to do it, just because I would try to put out as much fast as possible to try and get those models into position and scoring and killing and stuff. I don't know, Brodie, you were kind of nodding your head. Did you think Hoffman as well, or?
Yeah, I think it's sadly Hoffman again. As you said, his out of walk action moves are pretty low. He does have power transfer, which you can do to yourself to get a 2-inch push. But unless you're on a big base in the perfect position and your opponent moves it in the wrong location, it doesn't actually help you get the second, like a second marker, get two points out of a marker, which really sucks. He has a lot of like low movement, as we said, and if he's taking things out of keyword to try and force effectiveness in the pool, you might as well be just taking a different keyword and take those things anyway. Like, again, you could take Gearlings and Hoffman and it probably would be fine. So if you're soloing Hoffman, yeah, bring your Gearlings and you can probably make it work for getting your 2 to 3 points. But if you're looking at the entire faction, it's not really worth going to Hoffman to then go out a keyword to fix his problems when you could go to a different keyword and take those models and probably do better.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of, once again, the important thing to say about Arcanists is that just because we're saying we wouldn't pick that, I don't see any Arcanist master that couldn't do this strategy. Kind of like what you said, it almost feels like the schemes are kind of more what would make you determine your pick.
For sure.
I wouldn't pick Karis just because I think she could kill stuff and that would probably be fine. But once again, I think her keyword just kind of lets her down a little bit. Because when I think of Karis, I look at her, basically her selection, and the Fire Golem's really good. I do like the Fire Golem. But after that, it's like, okay, you have what? Maybe Elijah. The Pyro dude kind of sucks. He's very squishy. And yeah, I don't know. It just seems like once you got into that fighting, because Cloak and Dagger always has this moment where you start fighting over the markers. And I feel like her keyword doesn't hold up a lot there, especially if you can end the burning condition on the Fire Golem, then it just dies. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think if you were going to play her,
I think when you build... You go first.
I was going to say, I think if you're going to play her, you'd want to maybe bank on the mobility side of her crew and try to avoid fighting entirely, but I don't see it going well, especially if you're
yeah. But then I'm like, okay, there's more mobile masters, right? So it's like, well, why wouldn't I play XYZ in the game? You know, in that.
Yeah, like if I was building a Karis to deal with Cloak and Dagger, my list would end up looking like a Colette list without Colette at the head, because you would take Carlos, you would take Elijah, and you'd take a Firebranded, but then you'd take Gearlings, Harris, and Carlos, and then half of your list is just a Colette list. Like, why not take Colette?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the problem with Karis in general. She doesn't have a big keyword, and she has a lot of just average models in her keyword, which means you look at a keyword, you go, those are the good models I need to take. That's a model I like taking, and then go
have
looking.
You, so just speaking of Karis real quick, have you guys tried the Boilermaker model yet?
Not personally.
I haven't, no.
Don't see any reason to put it on the table, or
it seems reasonable in Karis, but it doesn't seem reasonable in Mei Feng, and Mei Feng's what I'm more likely to play.
That's fair.
And I don't think it helps her by that much. Like, more damage is more damage, but it's fine. It's definitely helping, but not by enough.
More damage, more problems, my friend.
I know I've heard from people that think...
I feel like those keywords needed a minion and an enforcer, like a good minion and then an enforcer, to just sort of bulk out the keyword for Karis and offer a bit more options.
Good, Jeff.
Yeah, I've definitely heard from some people who think the Boilermaker has some promise to fix some, to plug some holes for Karis, but I don't know her well enough, because every time I've played her, it's gone poorly.
Yeah,
and
I've seen some few things. All right, so we got that, and then that brings us into voting. So stuff the ballots.
Mm-hmm.
You have, I think, 7 markers, and you can interact within an inch of it. To stuff the ballot, you can put up to 6 in one ballot. Once the votes get to 6, it resets to 0. So you and your opponent are kind of racing to put as much ballots in there. But once it gets closer to 6, you kind of like, whoa, who wants to be the first one to blink to, set this thing to 0? So I think this is probably my favorite strategy in the gaining grounds. I don't know if you guys are also enjoying it, but I know I enjoy it quite a bit.
I think it is also my favorite. I think it's really well designed. It's really fun to play. It's also the one I struggle with the most, but that's probably why I like it the best.
I personally like all of them pretty evenly. I think this is a good GG. But if I had to choose one just because of what it offers to a pool, if I was making a GG all tournament, I'd probably take Stuff the Ballot just because it offers something so ridiculously different.
Yeah, it's unique.
I'd probably also take Raid just because I really liked whatever it was in the last GG. Yeah, guard the stash. It's just better guard the stash, and it doesn't really change much. But yeah, stuff is. I don't know if I'd call it my favorite because I like all of them, but
Sure.
it's definitely the most different from a lot of what we've seen in the game.
Well, go ahead and start us off then,
Which I-
Brodie, with who you would pick into stuff.
It would be Rasputina. It turns out mailing in votes is pretty good. You can just set up inches away. Yeah, you can also block markers off. Like if you've got a silent one 8-ish inches from the ballot in the corners, if you're doing a diagonal deployment, you can put a couple of ice pillars there, and then your opponent has to walk, destroy, walk, interact, and that is incredibly inefficient.
For people that aren't Arcanist players, Brodie, the reason why this is so good is because voting through ice pillars, through ice mirror, you can take non-melee actions through ice pillars with an 8. So essentially, even if you're sitting back with your silent ones, like you were saying, you can still be like, I'm going to put an ice pillar down and now I'm going to vote twice through it. So it's a really powerful ability.
Yeah. So a qualifier on that, if anyone hasn't realized it, it's due to how the game works. It's you can do an action with a range. Base to base is not a range. So it means you can't do plant with ice mirror. You can't drop schemes with ice mirror because they specifically say base to base, whereas stuff of ballots actually says within 1 inch, and that's a distance you can measure then from an ice pillar.
Yeah, and this is what Jeff was talking about with the previous strategy we were talking about, where just it seems really powerful to be able to be within an inch of something with an ice pillar and interact to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's so easy to spam them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's decreasing the number of walk actions you have to do, and whoever takes the least walk actions is probably going to win. I can't remember who said that. I think it might have been Cody. Cody Hyatt, that was like, yeah, whoever takes the least walk actions is going to win. And that's still kind of true to the game. Doing important actions instead of walking is pretty impactful. You also get the Blessed and you get Cedra to plug gaps and push deep and prevent points from being scored by your opponent, as they're both really quick models, which is really nice.
Do you have a preference between the first or the title for Rasputina?
I'm a big fan of the title. She just plays a little bit more how I like playing the game. I like summoning, and summoning a tools for the job model in the last activation of turn 1 is pretty nice. You cheat in your severe, and then you just get it back.
I'm still a little traumatized, pretty good. Haku, if you're listening to this.
So I agree that the title is pretty good. Summoning the acolytes makes it nice to actually bring those models. Yeah. However, for voting, I think I like Rasputina 1 more just because she puts out more ice pillars just herself, and it kind of triggers things. Plus her gun's really good with all those ice pillars. So for voting purposes, I do prefer the first version, but in most other circumstances, I can recognize how good the title is. It's just really good.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. My choice there is purely preference. I just prefer playing Raspi 2. So I can see why you would actually want Raspi 1.
Spoiler,
I quite like Raspi 2.
If a master has the ability to draw cards, Pete might like that version better. So technically it's cards.
I can feel you on that one. I did go to the card draw faction after playing Arcanists. So another thing about Raspi 2 that's quite nice is if your opponent is next to a ballot and is trying to interact with it, you can shoot at it, push it 4, give it slow, and then it's not getting back to vote, which is quite effective. There's also weird tech that does exist with Raspi that I did against a Masaki player where I pinned her to the board so she couldn't bury. That was quite good.
To be fair, though, Raspi 1 just says if you activate next to the ice pillar, you discard a card or you gain slow. So,
I agree, but it's the 4 inches as well as the slow, because if they're already next to a ballot, pushing 4 means they're no longer next to it and they're slow. And you're also giving some amount of agency to your opponent. If they don't want to get slow so they can do votes, they can just choose to discard. And while that is powerful, giving more options to your opponent is often not wanted.
Jeff, what about you? Who do you like into the old stuff in the ballots?
So I think Raspi's probably the right answer, but for the sake of continuing having an interesting conversation, I'm going to go with Tony 2 specifically. I've been messing around with her. I didn't play her for quite a while after she came out, but I've been messing around with her a lot lately, and I like her in Stuff the Ballots because she gives a lot of AP out with her bonus action. She's got a not insignificant totem, so I've had some good luck kind of running the crew up, kind of trying to claim one side of the board, positioning all of her models in places where they can get all their votes off, and just kind of playing the area denial and putting a really powerful Howard Langston in someone's face when they try to do anything I don't want them to do.
Yeah, and I think
that is another thing to say about Raspy is she has a non-insignificant totem as well.
Does she?
It's just powerful. Yeah, I actually really like the Wendigo. Like, he can chuck out Raspy's Ice Pillar, which is a move 13, Shockwave 2, give slow,
He can also
and
copy
can
the
draw
heal,
a card.
right?
Yep.
Oh yeah,
he can copy a whole bunch of stuff that's good. I quite like
if your
him.
opponent doesn't kill him by turn 2, that's a mistake.
Oh yeah, he's frail as all hell, but if you can keep him back and just get incremental value out of him, vote on your own ballot to stop your opponent from coming through and getting that easily is pretty nice.
Yeah, I kind of like Mouse because I think most people ignore him because they're like, what is he going to do? Like, he doesn't do anything, and I just run him off and have him run schemes, and he's
like,
slow.
What's this nerd going to do? This little midget.
Yeah, exactly. Like, normally all he's good for is like giving a single adrenaline to Tony, which after like turn 2 doesn't really matter, or doing a heal, but it's like a 2-inch range, so he's slower than everything else. And
gunsmiths getting their suits is pretty good. Like,
weirdly into Tony, every single game I have killed Mouse very early, and it's just for activation control. It's just like, this man is very easy to kill. Dead.
Yeah,
I mean, he's deceptively, he's harder to kill than he should be because he's in that crew. And if you have it all positioned right, he's getting effectively 1 armor. He might have hard to wound. He's getting positive flips on the duel. But if you want to kill him, kill him.
Yeah, it's I'll put more resources in just because I want activation control, not because he's that easy. But he is a lot easier than everything else.
Not only that, but Amina Nadu is just a beast of a model. So
maybe my favorite model in the game.
Yeah, she just does so much for that keyword. I wish she was like a stone cheaper so I could take her out of keyword, because I think 9's probably too expensive out of keyword. But
yeah.
I had a list that was just funny to take bears with her when their bears had grit, just so she would proc grit horrors for my bears and like Marcus. It was a bad list, but it was funny.
I never considered that, but I kind of like that idea.
Kind of like it.
Yeah, I've had games where she's reclaimed enough soul stones that if she wasn't free, she was close to free. So she's pretty great. Stopping charges in a 6-inch aura is also pretty great. Having an obey, I actually don't.
The stopping charges.
The stopping charges is huge matchup dependent. I think I don't actually get that much value out of her obey, even though it's nice to have it there. The other action that she has where she can push, it didn't occur to me till my second or third Tony 2 game, but because she is not only giving the half health for the purposes of grit, but if you're within an inch of a ski marker, you're at half health for the purposes of any abilities. When she does the walk the line or whatever the ability's called, where she pushes to a marker, you actually get a card draw if there's a ski marker there. So that's a huge thing, because that crew didn't have a lot of card draw. So she's also giving you that. She's great.
Yeah, and my pick, I think also the correct answer is probably Rasputina. I think she's just pretty amazing into the strategy, but I think probably a close runner-up for me is Sandeep, just because if you think about it, any model, any elemental in Sandeep 2 can vote 3 times. And some of them can vote 4, depending on how it goes. But just the fact that you have that much AP just to throw somebody, like literally you can go with Sandeep, toss a model 10 inches up the board, they can later activate and just vote 3 times. Or you can also do some fun things where it's like Sandeep's, basically just voting himself. Banasuva has an obey to make people vote. Just a lot of positional tricks. You can concentrate all over that crew to get into places to vote. You also have ice pillars to deny areas. So it's just a really AP efficient crew. So it's just the same reason why I'm like, you could easily play Sandeep into it. But that being said, voting, mailing in, pretty powerful, tends to change elections, some would say.
Hey, in fact, you could do that in Sandeep by just hiring a silent one or two, and then you can drop
You
ice
could.
pillars next to it and just have your two pretty damn good healers. I had my thoughts on people bringing silent ones out of keyword with magical training just to get magical training, and I think it's just too many stones. But if you're also getting the value of being able to mail in votes, I think it's actually pretty reasonable.
Well, and not only that, right? But in Sandeep specifically, because that's who I was talking about. Sandeep can put that out for the silent ones, and that way when they go, they can just
So they can just vote twice.
just boom boom rack it up.
Yeah, which is really nice.
That's not a bad idea, Brodie. I think I'm going to put that in one of my lists.
You're welcome.
See, this is the thing. Like, this is why if you haven't gotten the chance to talk to Brodie just like on Discord, you can literally, doesn't matter who you are. If you are an Arcanist or 10 Thunder player, you can just be like, hey, Brodie, I'm also an Arcanist or 10 Thunder player. I play X. What's something that I can bring to do Y? And Brodie will just give you a fire hydrant
A list.
amount of information that will just give you some things to think about.
I mean, I've played too many of the factions in this game where I could probably bullshit my way through most factions if anyone had any questions. Like, I spent a year playing Explorers. I spent half a year playing Rezzers. I spent like a year and a half playing Outcasts when I first got into 3rd edition. Like, I have bought too many models, essentially, and have played way too many things. Plus, I'm reasonably active on the World Series and chat to a lot of people that are very, very good at the game, and discuss with them what's good and what's bad. So I pick up most things in most factions pretty quickly.
So, Brodie, who's a master you wouldn't vote with?
I think, sadly, it's Hoffman again.
Poor Hoffman.
He's just a bit too slow. It's between Hoffman and Karras, I think. They're keywords that need a bit of attention. And Hoffman's a weird one where I don't actually think his keyword's bad. I think it's just this GG is not. Yeah. It's too much about efficiency and about a movement and killing, whereas he is about tanking and killing, and he doesn't have enough of the efficiency to go with it. And Karras is actually, I think, a keyword that just needs to be looked at and not even buffed. I think they just need more models.
Yeah.
If we could get some big chonky minions for them, would be cool. Just to flush it out, give more options.
Jeff, what about you? What would you not bring into Stuffed Belt?
Yeah, I think I would. Those are my two immediate answers, and I was trying to come up with a different answer to not keep picking on them. So I'm going to actually pick Marcus. And Marcus is my main master, and I actually think that there's a way you can probably play Marcus to play pretty well in Stuff the Ballots, but what I have found is that the way I tend to play Marcus doesn't give you enough AP to get all the voting out, and like they're pretty mobile, but they're good at getting to the voting locations, but they're not as good at spamming out the votes. And if your opponent has any way to defend, like by pushing you off of them or stopping you from voting when you're there, then they have a little bit of a hard time with it. So I don't think they're the worst. I don't think Marcus is the worst at it. I think it's probably Hoffman, but I'm going to choose him because I've had a really hard time with him in the past, and that's why I've been trying to, like I said, I've struggled with Stuff the Ballots because I always underestimate the amount of AP you need to score it effectively, especially if your opponent is good at defending it or interfering with you. So I've definitely struggled with Marcus, and I want to try making it work. I want to try tweaking the way that I normally play him and seeing if I can get it to work a little better, but he's obviously not the best choice.
Have you considered Geelings? I've played Marcus into stuff, and it works reasonably well where you just shove Marcus 2 down their throat with Cedra going up the side, killing wherever they've put their schema, and then Geelings fix any holes. It's annoying that the answer is always Geelings. You can also use the rabbit to just be your condition producer, where he walks, jumps, and then focuses near your Gearlings to give them focus.
Yeah.
Just have conditions.
Yeah, I think the last time I played it with Marcus was
words,
pre-Cedra, or at least I didn't have Cedra yet, so I wasn't playing her, but
yeah,
I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, I'd probably say Hoffman as well. I actually think maybe a more interesting thing that I've been playing with in Arcanist is actually trying to. It's kind of I would almost call it a hard mode. I've been trying to make Colette 1 work, and I think there's a way to make her work, especially in stuff like I found because I was looking at soloing her for a while, and I was like, okay, I can probably take Colette 1 in ballots and take Colette 1 in raid. Um, just
Yeah.
just because I think she's good at denial, whereas the other one's just raw efficiency. And I have a theory that sometimes in ballots, if you get to a ballot and your keyword's not ready for it, you could just die. So I think Colette 1 defends a little bit against that and can bury models and do some damage and kind of be a little more fighty as well as efficient. So I don't know. Have you guys had any games with or against Colette 1 in the current GG, or you just seeing the raw power of the smuggler?
Yeah, I think Smuggler's just very, very good. I can see what you're going with, and I think the list ends up looking like a really updated version of old Colette 1 Super Friends, where you just bring,
The good stuff.
again, Corify Duet, Shadow Lark, you take Carlos just to get some stuff, and then you just start taking a beat or two out of keyword to just grind with. And you can use Carlos and Shadow Lark as just go solve problems. But yeah, I think it could work if you were just soloing Colette. But again, just play something else if you've got the entire faction as an option. But I understand that some people don't.
I do think it's very encouraging and discouraging at the same time, because I think if you're an Arcanist player, this is a very good gaining grounds where whatever your favorite master is, you can probably make it work, even though we've picked Hoffman a few times. I feel like the faction, you could make that work just because just bring the good stuff is always an option. And it's very discouraging for people that hate Arcanists, because Arcanists are just pretty solid this gaining grounds.
Mm-hmm. And they were pretty solid last gaining grounds.
Yeah.
Well, we're the good guys, so we should be good at stuff. It's only fair.
Exactly. Along with the Thunders. The Thunders are the good guys too. They're good at this GG too.
I agree. Yeah, I haven't seen Colette 1. It's funny that you say that, though, because I played her a lot. It must have been Gaining Grounds 1, maybe early 2. I don't remember. Right around the time that she got changed and she got the nerf,
Mm-hmm.
I stuck with her and wanted to kind of make 1 work for a while, and I was struggling. And I also had an opponent that had just kind of figured out how to counter a lot of the stuff that she did, so it made it harder for me to do that. So I switched to 2, and then I actually haven't played either of them in probably a year or so. So I want to get back to her and Rasputina. I'm going to get some reps in hopefully with very soon, because I haven't played either of them in a long time.
Yeah, Rasputina is so ridiculous. It's just, you can do very bad things in this gaining grounds with Rasputina.
Yeah, I think even ignoring like Cedra and the Raspy 1 rework, I think they just did a really good job of making this new GG the perfect storm for Rasputina. Like, she's got so many options now, and then you introduce a rework that makes her other version playable, and you give her a busted model, and now she's conquering the world. I think Bash is fine. I know people are really salty about Bash having 14 health and Soulstone Cash, which, fair, but I don't think he is, in the grand scheme of things, particularly.
You're just saying
powerful,
that because you
less
one-shotted him with Shenlong. Not one-shotted, but one-rounded him.
One activation, yeah. I think my opponent might have forgotten that they could have stoned to put me on a negative, but still, stat 8 is a hell of a drug when you can make it irreducible.
True.
But I think he's good. I just think that the Ice Golem is equally good, and I think that's
that's
also
kind of
a
the
powerful
question, right?
dynamic.
It's like, okay, do you think your opponent? So one, I don't think you need to bring either in Rasputina. I think you could make a very good list.
No, I don't think so either.
But if they do bring them, you all of a sudden have this question of, okay, am I going to see an angry gator, or am I going to see an angry icy boy?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very effective, almost list chicken from War Machine, where it's like, am I bringing anti-armor to deal with a golem? Am I bringing just high damage to deal with the angry gator? Or do I have to chase down a angry goat and the weird blessed of December? They're very, very different questions to ask, and it's quite difficult to answer them all. unless you just take something that has a lot of raw power.
Listen,
Because raw
can
power
we
will
can we
see
get a
through
new
most
model
things in
for
the
the
game.
Blessed of December instead of this hairy boob antler thing?
It's not great, but I think that's.
It's really disturbing.
Well,
But I
so I was
think
putting it together, and I'm like, wait, are these boobs? I was like, what are we looking at? Slanesh models over here? Like,
the,
what's going
the
on?
old Zoraida model
Yeah.
had her boobs out too. I think this is the only one now, but yeah, they've really moved away from
Yeah.
that stuff.
Zoraida, I feel like it's a little bit more fitting.
Hmm.
It's just disturbing because, like, yeah, just why?
Hairy
But I was
troll
going to say,
boob.
I think the point you were making about having so many options in Rasputina that are good, I think that gets back to what Pete was saying about people who play against Arcanists a lot being a little frustrated about it, because when you have so many good options, it makes it hard for your opponent to tech against it or to know what to expect, especially if they're newer
Yeah,
players.
I mean, yeah, we barely even touched on the things that actually really piss people off out of keyword, like Soulstone Cash Golem or the Corfi Duet are very, very powerful things that at high level I take quite often. Like against Outcasts, I brought the Winds Golem into Damien, and I was able to up we go my Loheath over a building to get him into a better position, and then it completely shuts down Mad Dog. And Mad Dog is again an oppressively powerful model, and just being able to go, no, that doesn't work. Sorry,
Correct.
is very, very good.
Yeah, and we didn't even get into the versatiles. I mean, obviously, you get into stuff like, we did talk about the Gearlings and J5, but then you have just like Soulstone Miners. You have the Irina and her brother now are pretty decent. Some people like the Mechanical Rider. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I can see it work.
The nerf hit hard.
I'm actually a bigger fan of the Arachnid Swarm. I actually bring that with Sandeep sometimes, man, and it does work.
Ones are great.
Actually, I think Brodie, you're the one that told me. You're like, oh yeah, put Diesel Engine on the Arachnid Swarm and watch it do work.
Yep.
Well, because
Pretty good.
not only that, because Sandeep can toss it right. So I literally just tossed it, I think 20 inches up the board, because I tossed it with Sandeep and then tossed it again with Bonasuva, and then it just walks and just scored me like 3 points turn 2 just by itself.
Yep, and then goes and kills a model.
Yeah.
They're very good. Hell, even like my go-to of anti-armor is Joss. Joss out of keyword with diesel engines just kind of bullies models, which is really nice.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's a bunch of options, which is annoying for an opponent.
So I was thinking about Hoffman. Have you guys had a chance to see Clipper in Hoffman yet or no?
I technically had the opportunity to. My opponent didn't take it and took other things and got deleted by Damien. It was Guild Hoffman though, but yeah, I think he's good.
Oh, okay.
I think again Damien just kills it, which was why I didn't see it.
I think I actually like Clipper better into Bass. I think it adds more for Bass's crew than it does for Hoffman.
Yeah, Hoffman wasn't worrying about or not having good options for making a core, which I think Clipper makes a pretty good core for Bass. I think Bass is still a little bit behind most of the game, but he's getting better. He's got Rykart, he's got Clipper, he's got the Sandworm, he's got Pearl, and there you've actually got like the start of a list where you start then going, and then I take some models to score.
Interesting question for both of you looking at Arcanists. Do you guys think keyword-wise then that, not just in this GG, but do you guys think Karis's keyword probably needs a couple of newer models just to bring it up to line? Because when I look at the rest of the other keywords in Arcanist, I'm like, they seem all in a pretty decent spot. But Karis's models just don't excite me, and I just wish there was something else there.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think Karis herself, the people that play Karis, they're primarily relying on Karis to do
the heavy
whatever
lifting
they need to do. And I don't think that, like came up a few times in this conversation, I think a lot of the stuff in her crew are just you could do better in another keyword easily for cheaper.
Or just versatiles. Like you could just hire something else with her. I think there's 3 things that need to be touched in general in Arcanists. I think Karis just needs a couple more models. She doesn't really need a rework. Most of her models, like individually, you can look at and go, oh yeah, I can see a place for this. But she just doesn't have enough options. Damien's entire keyword needs a rework so they don't just grind him into the ground when they eventually touch Damien 1. And I think Sandeep 1 needs a relook at just to fix him.
Yeah.
They understandably so were very worried about the fact of how effective summoners were, and he was the biggest culprit, him and Soma.
Oh yeah, because he was just drawing cards whenever he wanted, man.
But the thing is, that would be fine now. The game has moved past it, and with the summoner nerfs, he doesn't do anything. It's very... You have to put in a lot of effort to make him do something. So I think he needs a buff. Damien needs an entire rework. Because I personally really like Damien as a character. I really like his theming. I really like his mechanics. They're just a little bit too good. And I think if they went through and messed with the synergies for things going in and out of the config, just to make the config really important, but not monstrously busted. It feels very similar to how pass tokens feel, where it's like there's all these synergies in Key and Gong that are relating to spending pass tokens, but just spending pass tokens as pass tokens is better. And I think Damien's, it's the same. It's like you could do all of these cute things with Marco and Leisure and Bella, but instead you could just get 13s, get movement, get value, because having 13s to kill people is really good.
Yeah, and do you think it's the repository or whatever it's called? Does that need to be kind of fixed, or is it his specific actions that just seem too good with not being able to reduce it or whatever?
There's several things. I think Memories of the Yellow Crypt was not thought through with our current understanding of how dabblers work. I think changing dabblers so they don't do that fixes that problem. But then also just, I think it's his line of sight ability. He has the most powerful line of sight ability in the game because there's 3 of them, and he has the best one because it actually stops people from doing actions, whereas the other 2 just do damage.
Is that the one where you don't get a suit?
Oh no, it's the in line of sight. If you declare an action that you've already declared, you have to discard a card or else the action fails. And that is just it's
extreme counterspell almost.
It's oppressive levels of control on a master who is not about control and just gets to kill you as well. Like, it's not like this is a control master and this is mostly what he does. Like, weirdly, I think if you chucked that on the second version of Damien and then came up with some new stuff that made this Damien just as killy, but a lot more focused on killing, and then you have the other Damien be focused on control, whereas currently the second version of Damien doesn't really do much, which is a bit sad. And Damien 1 does all the control and all of the damage.
Well, cool. I mean, the reason I like doing this specific episode, which is why we're redoing it for GG4, is I think it's good to just kind of splay out the faction and just kind of be like, here's what I like into it, and just get at least three, usually 4 different play styles to figure out how the different masters are settling in. So it definitely was good to talk that all out. And and Jeff, I know that so do you specifically run most of the Defective Dice channel, or how's that work on your side of things?
It is just me.
Okay, well, you want to share a little bit about that for people who haven't seen the channel yet?
Yeah, sure. So I have a YouTube channel. I do a lot about primarily about the lore of Malifaux. I like to cover specific characters and talk about their stories and kind of get people caught up or point people in the right direction if they want to go read the stories themselves, because there's a lot of super cool lore in Malifaux, but it is a little bit hard to find it all if you don't know where to look. And especially if like you have a particular character that you want to know their lore, you might have to buy 7 books to get all of their lore. So I try to make that a little bit easier. I also kind of make a lot of videos about getting new people into games and trying to make it a little bit easier to get into games. So resources like how to pick factions, how to pick masters, type of things that you need to buy, the difference between a core set and a starter set and all that kind of stuff. So check it out. We have lots and lots of videos. I've been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And if you want to make Malifaux content, go do it, because we need more people doing Malifaux content.
So Jeff, what is the best, in your opinion, Arcanist lore in the game it's like your favorite story about Arcanists?
I go A Line Drawn in Fire. It is a story from the Arcanist faction book that came out right at the beginning of 3rd edition. And I don't want to spoil it in case if anybody listening to this is super into the game but doesn't read the lore. I encourage you to go do it. But it's a story about a sort of internal conflict within the Arcanists and where things all come to a head. And it's about Ironsides and Karis having a little spat with each other, and it's pretty good. So definitely check it out.
I think my favorite lore is actually about Luther, which, if you don't know, is the alternate sculpt of the Blessed of December.
Mhm.
And apparently it's just this creepy, huge hair that just goes around the streets of the Malifaux eating bad children and giving dead rabbits to the good children, as the Easter Bunny would do, apparently. So it's pretty cool.
We used to get a lot of stories like that were just like creepy story, like one-off stories that didn't really impact anything else, but it was just like this really like mood-setting story about all the horrible stuff that goes on in Malifaux. And I think that was a Chronicle story from back when they did that.
Yeah.
So I wish they would bring stuff like that back, because some of those stories are really good.
And Brodie, looking at you, man, you do a lot of different random content with other people.
Yep.
How'd you like the pack mentality tier episode? Did you just put who were at the top for blue and orange?
Blue and S tier was Damien 1, of course. Orange I had Shenlong 1, McCabe 2, and at the time Asami 1, because she hadn't been nerfed yet. I think they've dropped a little bit, but I can also see people getting really salty about Asami 2, so we'll see. I'm enjoying it.
Dude, I see a lot of people doing some pretty gross stuff with Asami right now.
She's quite good. I don't have enough experience and can't confidently say that I would put Asami 2 in S, so I'm going to tentatively go somewhere around A, but I could definitely see it. And yeah, just quick plug to Pack Mentality. They're a New Zealand podcast, a bunch of my friends up in Auckland that I appeared on, talking about tier list and competitive. And they're also 3 members of the World Series committee. So if you want competitive games and to have me appear as your opponent one round and get annihilated, then yeah, you're welcome to join. They're always fun games, even if I do.
Well, that's the cool thing about you too, Brodie, is like, if you want to test your mettle, Brodie is occasionally looking for games on the Rage Quit Wire Discord. And I think my favorite thing is when I see you play Lance, I'm like, so Lance, how'd it go against Brodie? He's like, oh, I got utterly destroyed, mate. He's like,
we had it raw recently. He was very happy with it.
Oh man.
I've had some of my favorite games to play were the ones where I went 8-2. And it's like, I got my teeth kicked in, but hey, I had a good time.
When I started wargaming down when I moved to Christchurch, which is in the South Island in New Zealand, one of my consistent opponents is a guy called Will, who was the world champion of Guild Ball, and I was his punching bag for about a year or so. So I understand it's a great game. You're playing against a great opponent. It's great fun, but oh boy, do you just get grounded to dust.
Well, and if you're wanting to get to that level, though, I mean, if somebody asked me, like, hey, I'm in Malifaux, I want to become competitive, I would tell them, well, you need to play Vassal because that's the easiest way to grind out reps, and 2, you want to get in the Malifaux World Series because that's where you're going to play the best players in the world, and even if you get destroyed violently in the World Series, you're going to learn the good combos and you're going to learn how to play well. So when you go to real life tournaments, you're not going to have every round the busted World Series player. You're going to be playing at like average to good players, and you might have a leg up now just because you've been playing against all these ridiculously, seasoned opponents who play the good stuff.
Unless you're in New Zealand, then
it's fascinating
the
to
tournaments
play.
are just World Series players, and it's a bit brutal. But yeah, on top of that, I would just say, even if you're not looking to be competitive, play in tournaments, go to your local tournaments. They're a great way to guarantee 3 to 5 games on a weekend, meet some cool people, and the Malifaux community is pretty damn good. There's not many people that I'd be like, yeah, they're a bit of a prick, but most people are pretty chill, even if they will destroy you on the table. So would not be.
Brodie will smash you, but he's good to have a game with.
And sometimes I'll just
I just did a vlog. I just did a vlog of the weekend when we were out in Massachusetts playing in the Danger Planets tournament, and that was sort of the whole premise of the vlog was, I play casually. I basically have 1.5 opponents that I play with inconsistently, and I don't really get to play as much as I'd like to, but I started going to tournaments when they invited me to the content creator tournament, and I had a blast. And I never thought I would want to go to a competitive tournament because I was like, I don't care that much about being super good at the game or winning, but it's so much fun. And like you said, the Malifaux community is so great. Like even the people that are gonna destroy you are you're gonna enjoy. You're gonna have a good time doing it because they're cool people, and you get to meet people that do podcasts and people that do other content that you like, and it's always a good time. So. Definitely, if you can, go to a tournament.
It was funny on that vlog too, because I forget who was riding with you in the car, but you were like, this person never comes to events, but they had a great time at one, so they're coming back out.
Yep. My buddy Kevin, he's the one that introduced me to Malifaux, and it was literally like, he's the guy that I have a heart, he plays a lot of different games, and he likes Malifaux the best, but it's just hard to kind of make time, and we have different schedules and stuff. And he came with me to Captain Con, and he had so much fun that he immediately was like, when's the next tournament? We got to go.
I mean,
like, all right, let's
they're
go.
also great just for that Saturday night in between day 1 and day 2 of going out for food with people that are like-minded and chatting shit and playing board games and stuff. It's just great. Like, even if you're not going to win, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast, then you're probably on all the Discords, and you're probably in all the communities, so you probably know a lot of the people that are going to be there. Especially if you're traveling to go to something, and you get to meet people that you only know from a Discord name or whatever it might be. So it's fun.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it'll be good. The Houston tournaments probably. Well, actually, that's wrong. Nova is going to be the next one. I never go to Nova though because I hate going into DC. I've done it before and I'm just not a fan of it anymore. So the next big one for me besides that would be the Houston GT, which is going to be a blast once Doug gets rid of the con crud. We're going to have him on and talk about the pools, and hopefully we have international travelers again. That was fun last year. We had some from the Pacific Northwest, even on the Canada side. So
either next year or the year after, I'm considering trying to get to an American tournament. We'll see how expensive it is. They did get recently announced for like $1,000 return.
I don't know if it's very much different from Australia to New Zealand as far as plane prices go. But I was talking to somebody who was pleasantly surprised that plane tickets from Australia to Houston were not that bad.
Yeah, they
words.
recently announced a new path stopping in Fiji between New Zealand and Dallas, which was for $1,000 return, and that's New Zealand dollars. So like, I don't know, 600, 700 in US, and I was like, I could do that next year if
that's not too bad. Yeah.
I was like, I could work.
Yeah, not for an international flight.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say, I've definitely paid more to go not as far. So.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to Japan in a couple of months, and that was very much more expensive.
Well, good. Maybe we can get you over to the States. And I don't know, have you been to the States before, Brodie?
No, the furthest I've gone is 3 hours from New Zealand. I have been to Australia, and I have been to Fiji. Japan is going to be the furthest I've been so far. In 2 months,
we're gonna get you out one of these
Definitely.
years.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, well, I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I want to thank you guys for coming on. It was definitely fun talking about the Arcanists. And until next time, make sure that you guys are flipping cards and flipping tables. We will see you all later.
Thanks for having me.